All right, everybody here that's already in Mosaic, thanks so much for being here. Can you do me a favor? Can you come closer to the stage? It makes it easier when you have questions and we're passing the mic. And we have lots of room up front, and it's more intimate if everyone is a bit closer. You're fine. You did a great job. Paul, you just rocked it in your chair choice. Everyone else, if you could come up closer, you don't have to sit right in the front. Those are the best seats, but you can come closer so that we can be closer together.
So Rachel.
All right, excellent. I do want to mention some of our sponsors. Big thanks to Insperity, who's a major sponsor this year, HPZ Marketing, and Flourish, an all-in-one finance platform to simplify financial management. Okay, so we're going to bring the volume down because we're about to get started. I'm going to introduce our panel moderator. So we're just going to wait a moment for all our conversations to come to a completion, come to an end. Bring your attention to the stage where everything is at. Thank you so much. And thank you for being awesome participants and playing along with us these last couple of days. Let me tell you about who is going to be facilitating this panel. Oh, no. Matt. All right. Have a moment of zen while I run back and get my script.
Everybody, let's just take a moment. Go.
Excuse me.
Surrounded. I'm doing some PQ.
Okay, I'm going to walk and talk. Our panel moderator has spent his whole 23-plus career in new revenue growth, focused on superior sales strategy that has a track record of success.
No, it's not.
No, that is not. No, that's not. That's the other one.
Introduce yourself.
I can introduce myself.
You know what,
I'm fine with it.
Matt? Given you and I go back so far, and it would be really redundant if I were to make up and share all the tales and stories that we've shared together, why don't you tell some of these fine folks about yourself and who you are today?
No problem, Jason. I remembered your name.
Yeah, lucky me.
Hi, everybody. My name is Matt Schwant. I am the president and co-founder of a craft brewery located right here in Minneapolis, Minnesota called Bauhaus Brew Labs. And thank you. We're here at another fine brewery, Finnegan's. Let's give it up for Finnegan's. This place is great. My business over the last decade has worked with a lot of fractional professionals, including right now we currently employ a fractional CFO. We've also worked with fractional CMOs in the past, so I'm familiar with successful relationships in the fractional space. And my friend Katie Walters asked me to moderate this panel, which I'm very excited to do today. Prior to starting Bauhaus, I was an attorney. I actually worked for the Minnesota Attorney General when Lori Swanson held that office. I worked in private practice as well. I had enough of that fun, started my own business in beer. So we've got three fantastic panelists here for you right now. I'm going to introduce them all. First up, we have Meg Van Sloan. Meg is the COO of Authentic, a community of fractional chief marketing officers who help grow businesses, overcome random acts of marketing, TM, 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 and confidently take the next right step to achieve healthy growth. Meg began her work with Authentic as a fractional CMO before assuming the role of vice president, client services, and now COO. Before joining Authentic, Meg spent 25 plus years in key marketing and operation leadership roles on both the client and agency side, while also building a successful marketing consultancy of her own. Welcome, Meg. Next up on our panel is Carol Fraser, a serial entrepreneur now leading her fourth endeavor, C4 Talent. As a 30-year veteran of people and development practices, as well as a certified coach, Carol's mission now is to bring elevation and awareness of the strategic impact of human resources for any organization. She accomplishes that through providing fractional leadership and support to small and medium-sized businesses, as well as focused coaching and mentoring of human resource professionals to ensure they are equipped to excel in their very valuable roles. Carol is also the creator and co-host of the Fractional Edge podcast, where she and her co-host interview fractional executives showcasing their talents and how adding fractional executives to a company's workforce planning can bring a competitive edge. Give it up for Carol. And last but not least, we have Rachel Inevsky. Rachel has been the CEO of Matters of Management, a fractional human resources consulting firm for the past 12 years. Her organization not only provides fractional HR, but also strategy, executive coaching, and direct hire placement. She is currently in growth mode while she prepares for the release of her book and the completion of her doctorate in organizational leadership. Welcome, Rachel. Very fun. Okay, so this panel is all about successful relationships between business owners and fractional professionals. And we're going to ask our panelists a series of questions, and then at the end, we'll reserve 15 minutes for audience questions for these fine panelists. So why don't we kick it off here? Anybody can answer, feel free. We've got three mics. First question that I want to know is, what strategies do you use to establish trust and credibility with business owners who may have reservations about fractional executives?
So strategies, it's really, we talked a little bit about this on a different panel, but it's really about the communication with the client and really trying to help them better understand that even though we may only be there for 5, 10, 20 hours a week, we are their partners. We are invested in their successes as well as any trials and tribulations that they're going to go through. So when I'm trying to develop a real connection with my people, it's usually through continuous and ongoing communication and helping them to ask questions that they didn't think to ask themselves, right? So really help them see that there's value beyond what their parameter of what they think success looks like. Because if I can immediately bring a question that makes them go, oh shit, I didn't think about asking that question. That right there already tells them that they've got a trusted advisor.
I would agree. I don't know if this is on.
It looks like it.
I would agree. I think you're going to hear communication is sort of the thread that goes through everything. If you can be really, really clear up front, okay, thanks, with your client and really understand, first of all, what does success look like for them? I think we all go into relationships and we assume like, oh my gosh, I had the answer to this. If you can just go in and be more of a listener at first and really help to discover what success looks like for them. And I think it's really about creating true rules of engagement, helping the client understand what it means to be a fractional, how you'll show up as a partner, as an advisor. But it's kind of like parenting. I don't know how many parents are in the room, but you say something and you have to say it multiple times throughout the engagement. So I think that's the big piece of it is when our company, when we start from the very get-go, when we're talking to a prospect, we actually, this sounds really funny, but we do, I think, harder job trying to disqualify than qualify clients because we are truly understand who our ICP, who is that ideal client that we're going after. We know when we bring that company on, we can create true value. They get what we're doing and we're helping them along the way. And it's, I think, one of the things, and we've had to really learn this as we're growing as a company. You don't want to say yes to every client. You have to make sure that there is that synergy, that they're going to understand. They're going to have questions along the way. You need to continue to communicate, but don't just pick up every client because when you find those right clients, that's when it really, the magic happens.
So for me, it's a little bit different because we establish trust before we even walk in the door. It's kind of how we're referred. We're referred mostly by trusted advisors, mostly by accountants. That has been really all of my growth. No marketing whatsoever in 12 years, outside of some thought leadership. So writing, publishing, speaking. So people already recognize that what we're bringing to the table, by referral or by what they've read or learned about us, establishes trust. I also have this small little problem. I don't recommend it, but I give a lot of things away for free. And what I mean by that is, it's bad. But what I mean by that is, even in my proposals, there's a disclosure that says that I've been exposed to a lot of business owners and industries and intelligence, and so I will often insert myself where I don't belong in terms of giving insights or different best practices, and that I don't charge for. It's just who I am. So I think that so it starts before I walk in the door. I'm already viewed as someone who's vetted and trusted. I am at the table right from the beginning. All of our people are. We are there, and then the continued approach of providing additional services and opportunities.
Thank you. Meg, something you said made me think, when you're talking about ICPs, is there an ideal stage of development that a business should be in for an engagement to make sense for a fractional?
Well, it really depends on what services you're providing and how you. So we say fractional, and it can mean various things to different people. So at Authentic, when we say that we're providing our clients with a fractional CMO, we're truly assuming the seat, 100% accountable for all things marketing. We will not take clients on that are not ready for us to come on to their leadership team. For us, that is really, really important because we know to drive the right business investment, and that's truly, marketing is a business investment if it's done right. You have to have a seat at the table. You have to have a voice. You have to understand innately what's happening in all parts of the business, not just marketing and sales. When marketing and sales are kind of cast to the side, that's when random acts happen, right? That's when marketing becomes a cost center because you're doing all sorts of things, scattering your resources, and you're not getting anywhere close to that North Star that you're shooting for as a company. So I don't know if that helps to answer the question.
It does, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'd say in my business, and I don't know if it's the same for you, it could be at any stage. I have a nonprofit that is just got its first grants, and part of their strategy is to ensure that they have the right people to get their message out. So I'm one of the first people that they brought in, which is really rare for somebody to see that people really do drive your business. But then I've got others where, I've had a client hire me because their entire HR department walked out. And so it's a company that's been around for 20 years, and obviously there was a shift, and it's like, oh, you need an elephant sweeper. Got it. But you can come in and bring your magic that the previous team didn't have. So I'm kind of all over the board when it comes to the ideal time to call in a fractional for HR.
Okay. Yeah, and I didn't even know that this existed, right? So 12 years ago, I created this little company, and the mindset was growth strategists with a people purpose, right? So all things HR, but ideally, I was coming into companies to help grow the company via their people and then work my way out of a job. That was the plan. And however I could do that, wherever I could do that, that was the incentive. So now when I look at all of the different clients that we've serviced and all of the different things that we've done, there really are no two the same. It's all kind of all under the same house when they need us, right?
So I think it's also what you want out there, right? So for us, we also really define it. It's $5 to $100 million in revenue is what our ICP is. Privately held for the most part because we know that if there's not a lot of cooks in the kitchen, we can actually get in and do the value and do the work with our clients. So I think any size company, there could be a position where you could have a fractional. You just have to get really clear with what your offering is and what you want to go after. If you scatter yourself and you go after everybody, it's just like random acts marketing. You're not going to get very far very fast. But if you are really diligent about figuring out who is the client that I want to serve and where can I create that magic, where can I create that movement and that value, like Rachel said, you're going to start to create that momentum and people are going to start talking. Oh my gosh, Matt, he exploded our growth in this XYZ way. We told him this, and if you keep going and digging in, those referrals will come. Our company has grown on referrals too, and the other thing I will say is get out there on LinkedIn. I am not as good as LinkedIn, but if anybody knows Jennifer Zick, who's the owner of Authentic, it really does matter. Like, get out there and people start seeing you as a thought leader and they start to trust you more and more when you're on LinkedIn. And it's not just about, I think we all sort of have that thought process from the past that it's all business, thought leadership. People actually want to know you a bit as a person. And that's where the trust can start right from LinkedIn before they even know you.
Great, thank you. Well, no matter the size of the business or the stage of development, you want to get your clients rapid results. How do you balance that need for rapid results and impact with the long-term goals and sustainability of the businesses you work with, and what are the trade-offs involved?
So oftentimes when we come in, we start out with a lot of work, right? So if it's a fractional engagement in HR, most of the time we'll do an audit and really kind of recognize all the things they haven't done. And so there's a lot of work that happens in a short period of time. After we set up that house, it's kind of just, you're still paying me the same amount of money for doing a lot less work, but it's maintenance. And so there's this relationship disconnect, right? Like, oh my God, you were here 75 hours a week getting everything ready, and now you're only here 3 hours a week, and I'm still paying you the same amount of money. But the whole idea, I think, behind being fractional is that we're creating systems in compliance and in maintenance, and to avoid risk for the employers, for the ownership. And so I think when it comes to defining goals and strategies and what they're going to expect, that needs to be established right away, because I know early on, many years ago when we first did this, guns a-blazing, we're out there, we're doing all the work, and then all of a sudden it's quiet, and so there's an expectation change there.
Do you want me to go? When we start talking to prospects before they become clients, the first thing we will let them know in marketing's not fast. Like, to do marketing properly, it is not a fast game. But what we help to dissipate, the clients thinking through, like, but wait, we've got all this stuff that needs to still get across the finish line. We come in and we assure them we're not starting at A, throwing everything out that they've done and starting over. But similar to what Rachel said, we've got a methodology that we work through. So we come in and we spend a bit of time at the front end of our engagement to do the discovery, the proper discovery, to understand, to get underneath the hood. We have an assessment, an audit, a discovery phase. We come, and then we come to the table about 90 days later with a marketing action plan. It doesn't mean that we go behind the scenes and do all this. We are working with our clients every step of the way. And there might be certain things, like when I was a fractional CMO, I had my client desperately needed a new website. So this was my first client with Authentic. And so that was where the mainstay of my work in the very beginning was working. And the sales team kept coming to me and saying, but I need a brochure, I need a brochure. And I'm like, you don't need a brochure, you need a really healthy website. That's your brochure. But sometimes it is listening, and if it's chipping away, there's something there. So I stopped, I listened to the sales team. They really didn't need a brochure, but it was one of those things where, sometimes you're going to have to do some little things along the way, right? But the biggest part of your job is, for our CMOs, they ingratiate themselves into the culture and onto the team, but they have to sometimes play that dual role of an external consultant, saying, hey, you know what, here's why we're not going to do this, here's why we're going to spend the resources over here, because we have to build a really solid foundation first, and we can't figure out what that foundation is until we get underneath the hood and we understand what's going on. You might be doing a really good job in this area, but this area over here is crumbling. And so when we start to help clients from the very get-go to understand why it's important to get in and do that discovery and really build the foundation, then they get it. But if they don't get it right away, you got to keep having those conversations, and then sometimes you got to do the little quick hits just to pacify people.
I'm going to parlay off of, you said marketing takes time. Many of us are brought into the organization as a growth catalyst, and we're asked to bring people on. Well, people isn't just a one and done either. Those are things that need to evolve, and you need to bring them into the fold, help them understand how the company's going to grow. And that's, I think, where leaders who don't bring in specific fractionals to release the valve, and they're trying to do everything, don't actually do the company and the employees a disservice. So whether it's a turnaround that you go in as a fractional, where you need to almost re-educate and or re-engage whoever is still there, or you're going in as a new new organization and you're growing, and the culture changes with every new hire, right? Every time you put in a new program, it's change management. All of those things take time, and I think, as my colleagues have said here, it's always about the communication and the why and what that value is going to be at the end, but it's not a one and done. It's something that's going to take time.
There's also, I think that it takes us a little time to get into a company and understand their culture. In order to do anything successfully, you have to align with that culture, right? So because we're only there a small period of time, it takes us longer to get up to speed on, how that company breathes. Once we're there, I think that we can take it to the next level. But it does, we're not working 40 hours, 60 hours of work, immersing ourselves into the culture of a company right away. I also think it's important, as if there are people in transition or thinking about moving into this space, I certainly have had a ton of people dropped in my lap to say, hey, I just left my HR job, corporate, I'm making $250,000 a year, and I'm thinking about doing fractional HR. And I want to just give them a big hug and say, I'll find you a job doing HR someplace for a company. It's a really different experience. What you've been doing for so long in corporate HR does not necessarily transition into how you're approaching a business owner and then deploying systems into a totally new industry that you may not have had experience with. So it's a jump, is all. Good one, but
Good one.
yeah.
Thank you. All right. Shifting gears a little bit, fractional executives often work with a diverse range of businesses, and maybe this is even a perk of the job, getting some variety. But how do you stay current with industry trends and ensure that your expertise remains relevant and up to date for each client?
This goes back to a question that was asked in another session. How often do you work on the business versus in the business? The on the business is staying up to date with everything. And you're more impactful when you're staying abreast of whatever the changes are or the trends. And let's just face it, over the last couple of years, things change very rapidly and very often. So, you need to kind of think about carving out a chunk of your time to ensure that you are staying up to date with those things that are going to impact, whether it be your ICP or even your current client base. Because if you're not, then you're falling back into the bad habit of what a full-time W-2 is doing, which is the hamster on the wheel, and that value and impact starts to diminish. The ability to go into a weekly meeting and say, hey, this thing's about to come around the corner in January or October or whatever, and I just want to let you know that we've got to start prepping for this, is really helpful, because that's when they see us as the trusted advisor, like, oh my God, you just saved my business. Those are the moments where you've got to take time to, whether it be an email list that you sign up for, or every Friday for 2 hours you go to your favorite Gartner or McKinsey or whatever and you start to read up. I think that has to be one of your job responsibilities as a fractional executive.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. No, you.
Okay. So it's such an interesting question, right? We say we're industry agnostic. For most of us, right? So, and how we get there, in a society, in a world where people want specialists and experts, right? So where our expert level is, and I hope I'm talking for all of us, but our expert level is in the body of knowledge that we sell, right? So I'm an expert in HR. I could do HR compliance pretty much everywhere, except I don't do it in California because they're crazy. So, although, New Jersey is not, right? California, New York, New Jersey, that's how it goes. So my certifications, learning knowledge, all of that stuff, I could move that anywhere, and I've got clients all over the country that I'm able to do that for. So the compliance component, I think, in HR and in marketing are similar approaches. When you get into industry, I do think it's incumbent upon the owners to then educate themselves. And so this is one of the reasons why I have independent contractors working for me. No one is, right? We're not all knowing. We try to be, but we're not all knowing. And I think it's really important that business owners believe that they're hiring the best person, the most knowledgeable person in their industry. So for example, I have a staffing agency or a staffing component within my business, and for the first time ever, I am working with a staffing agency. So last week I was in Charlotte speaking at Staffing World. And so all of those things was really interesting, right? So staffing company client, staffing company, what I do, and yeah. So I was able to bring back all of that knowledge back to that business owner and to help them out. Same is true if you work in, auto dealerships, learning and going there. I mean, you have to spread your time. And so when you're working on the business to then educate all of those people, I think that that's kind of the best way to move it. But the compliance component is pretty straightforward.
I would have 2 pieces of advice. First of all, if you're not a voracious learner, a fractional role is probably not going to make your heart sing, because you are constantly learning and you need to, whether that's about different industries, different companies, different things that are happening in marketing. The way that we do it at Authentic is a little bit different. We have, I would say, find your community. So that Matt read my bio in the beginning, and we're a community of fractional CMOs. So we truly work together behind the scenes. So our clients hire they have one of our CMOs at the helm, but behind the scenes, we're working together. So 3 times a month, we have what we call mindshare meetings. They're on Zoom. We do peer reviews. People share their work, what's working, what's not working, what's the latest trends, a cool tool that they found. And we share it, and we have a resource center. We are also on Slack every single day, helping, seeding, questions and people answering. And we're firm believers there are no marketing unicorns out there. And so our fractional CMOs, we don't do, there'll be time to time that you might have to dip in and do something tactical. But for the mainstay, we really stay in that strategic realm, and we bring in vetted agency partners to come in and help us to do the work, whether that's a solo contractor or a small to medium-sized agency. We also tap into them. So find your community. Find how you don't need to do it alone. It's, it can get kind of lonely out there, but find some good networking, some good, whether you're in marketing, HR, whatever fractional, industry you're trying to explore, find your people, because do it together and learn. You can learn faster, and it's just way more fun than trying to do it by yourself.
And do you find that the fractional community is very open in sharing strategies and helping you out?
Oh my
Of course they are, right, Karina?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Fractionals United is just part and parcel of why you can find the right community to help you. I mean, she actually creates little sub-communities of those specialties. So we have within Fractionals United, we have our Fractionals People channel, and we're able to share with one another.
Related question, as far as working with a diverse range of businesses, you often work with multiple clients at one time. How do you manage your time and priorities effectively to ensure that each client receives the attention and results they expect?
If I asked my husband that question right now, he would say, I never see my wife, ever. About an hour and a half before I was set to come to the airport to come to this event, it was like there had to have been a full moon, something. Every single client called me for something. An hour and a half straight, I was just talking. I was so exhausted by the time I got to the airport. I'm not good at boundaries. I love to hear what's going on. And in my HR practice, always, I think I grew up believing that my role, my job was to be people-facing, to help a business owner be, procuring new clients, new business. So I'm happy to have those conversations. It won't always be like this, because exhaustion is right there. But that's like what I love. I dive into all of those conversations. Other people right away build their boundaries, like I'm available from here to here. Not me. It's even in my proposals, 24-hour service. If you need us, we're going to be there. That's our response time, is right away.
And I think because clients are not on a schedule. You need to be very fluid. I know that many of us, when we were full-time W-2s, Monday through Friday and then Saturday and Sunday you take off. I would rather have that, as they were mentioning at Fireside, that work-life integration. So there are times when I'm like, I'm just not going to work for 4 hours today, and I'll just do it on Sunday. I don't care. It's because it's my time. And so I would rather have that flexibility to be able to work on client deliverables that aren't urgent. So let's say, oh my God, I did have a hair on fire moment, and all of a sudden I'm like burnt out because I had a 2-hour conversation. And I'm gonna be like, you know what? I'm taking the next 3 hours to just recoup and recharge. And that article I needed to write on thought leadership, I'll do it on Saturday. That's kind of my approach. It's, I definitely do blocks of time for certain things to work on the business, but I kind of try to flow.
So I think from what you guys are saying, I think the takeaway is you need to come up with whatever your specific rules of engagement are. So at Authentic, the way that we do it is a little bit different, but we give our CMOs the autonomy, but they do have to establish certain office hours with clients. We do that purposely. The reason, so when I started with Authentic, we were a different organization in terms of we were all 1099s, so we had our own businesses, and then we were working with Authentic. The only way that I could do it, I wanted to make sure I was excelling and making sure I was managing expectations for every single one of my multiple clients. I right away established office hours, and I said, okay, during these hours each week, I'm 100% on your business. So if you need to call me, call me. If you need to set up a meeting, these hours are precious, right? These are yours. But I'm going to be doing this for each of my clients, so you all know specific times that you can get a hold of me. And then helping them to understand, but there's going to be hours woven throughout the week. You're going to call me or leave a voicemail or an email or text. And here is my policy, how fast I'll get back to you. So it might be a business day. It doesn't mean it's always going to be, but if you set the boundaries, if you set the expectations up front, it's not your client texting you at all hours of the night and they're looking for those 3 dots. We've all become, it's like human nature. Wait, I just texted somebody. And Jody Eckes, who that's out in the crowd, we actually consulted together, and I will tell you, it was a wild ride. We had some clients that would text us literally 24/7, and I think Jody and I, after about 2 years of just this is crazy, we both established this is not how it's going to work, in order to really create a good expectation for the client and not burn us out. So I think at the end of the day, you have to figure out what your rules of engagement are, and I will tell you, Rachel actually is 24/7 because we're working together, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she is always available. So find out what works for you, but then be very clear and articulating that to your client.
And an aspect of what you're talking about, and the panel alluded to it earlier, is just the importance of communication with your clients, how fundamental that is to success. Can you discuss the ways that you adapt your communication style to different personalities and stakeholders for a business?
So I train in DISC, and so the first thing that I do when we're working with either a new independent contractor or new business owner is we'll conduct a DISC. The way that DISC works, or the way that any of these communication tools work, is a basic fundamental, which is you can only change your response, right? So I'm going to understand how somebody likes to communicate. You and I actually talked about this, right? Mm-hmm. How somebody, likes to communicate, what their style is, what their approach is, how they prefer, if it's a text, if it's a phone call, if it's an email. So we established that right away. I mean, I've got crazy notes on all of our people, just so I know that I'm all over the place. And so, quite honestly, because I've been doing this for so long, I could probably just look at the sea of all of you and determine where you all are on this, just based on what you're wearing and how the pace and the way you walk across the floor. So after you do it for a long time, you do recognize these things, but also to keep them engaged in those communications. When I see something, or when our team sees something, we'll make sure to give it out. We, best practices is kind of, the thoroughbred between everything that we do to maintain the communication.
I think that I love what she just said, but I think the other thing that I really lean into my coaching practice. I'm really asking a lot more questions so that, again, I'm empowering that business owner to raise their own awareness and education and skill. So many times they'll call me with a hair on fire moment, or even at a regularly scheduled check-in. I'm ready to go down the list of what we said we would be doing, but everything's always coming from a place of curiosity and trying to ask questions to make sure that they understand why that's important to them. Is it really important to them? And, how can we get there together, right? I don't want to be just a cog in a wheel. And so I do lean in when it comes to the communicating with my clients from more of a questions to help it become a dialogue. And I'm just not spewing out my magic and hoping that something sticks. I would rather figure out through assessments or through coaching questions, what kind of person are they? What kind of listener are they? What kind of adopter are they? And so that's just some of the other things that I would add to what she's saying.
Well, you do ELI, right?
Oh, yeah, I do ELI.
So maybe you should.
The Energy Leadership Index, that's really interesting if you haven't heard about it. It really talks about the energy. So we had a speaker up here earlier today talking about energy, and it's how you and your whole being enters the room, or what that room feels like when you walked into it. There is an assessment out there called ELI, Energy Leadership Index, and based on a very simple series of questions, you start to better understand what somebody else's resonating energy level is. Is it low? Is it catabolic? Or is it high? Is it anabolic? And when you have those people who have the growth mindset, they've gone through their values exercises, they know exactly kind of where they fit into the scheme of the world, it's a lot easier to communicate with those people. But you can see where their triggers are in this assessment, just in life. And so you can kind of prepare yourself for when they start to come down that slope. And so that's another good thing. I mean, this is really, now that I'm just sitting up here on this panel, we should be like saying, okay, all of you people, if you want to work with us, and we'll give your people an assessment, and this way you'll know what your clients kind of think like and feel like, we're happy to do that with you.
We establish it very very closely into the relationship as we are onboarding our clients. We just purposely ask them, how do you like to be best communicated to? We figure out very early on what's the level of detail, because we work with different clients. Our CMOs are reporting directly to the CEO, but their secondary client, they are building out the marketing organization. So they're going to be working with you're going to be working with a lot of different clients and needs. Now, here's what it's not, though. It is not I'm going to send this communication 5, 10 different ways because this person doesn't like this. You have to be reasonable, right? We had one client, there were two, it was kind of like a co-CEO situation, and one client wanted to see the presentation this way, the other client wanted it completely developed this way. You don't want to get into that completely frazzled, like you're spending all your time just rehashing the communication. So I think it's really, really important to help the client understand you're listening, you're going to try to adjust as much as you can and communicate in the style that they like. But equally as important is helping them to understand how you're going to be communicating. There's things on your side. So like our CMOs do a weekly status with the CEO. They do a weekly recap so the whole team knows exactly what's going on and what's expected and what's missing and what's next steps. And we have a methodology that we bring our clients through. So every step of the way, we're helping them to understand this is when you're going to get the communication on this. This is what it's going to look like. So it's not, taking your marketing roadmap and slicing it up 25 different ways just to make sure everybody's appeased. So kind of finding that balance between what your clients need and how you're going to best represent the work that you're doing.
Carol, you brought up coaching earlier. I'm glad you did, because I have a question about that. Sort of from multiple angles, what role does ongoing mentorship and coaching play in your relationships with your business owners, and how often and how do you offer support to help them grow and succeed? And maybe another angle here is, how often do you seek out mentorship for yourselves so that you grow and succeed?
Oh, yeah. Well, I definitely have a coach. And I'm also part of like a group, a positive intelligence group. So it kind of keeps my brain in the right mindset. But it's so hard for me to say, okay, and now I'm going to mentor you, or now I'm going to coach you. That is just kind of who I am. And like I said, I'm having a conversation. It is focused on asking questions, and it's always around that, let's figure out how to make you better as a business owner. Because if you're focusing too much on the people side, is that really your business? If that's not your business, let's reassess and let's go ahead and ask the right questions so that you're always staying focused on the eye on the prize, right? And that's when I'm able to say, you've spent the last 3 weeks focusing on your budget. Seems like you might be struggling. I have a fractional CFO. Maybe we want to start thinking about that as part of our strategic plan. So it's really, I do ask a lot of questions, and sometimes I won't lie. I had a situation with the co-CEOs. One of them was like, "I love it that you were making me think this way," and the other one's like, "Why are you questioning me?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay, got it." So you just got to kind of read that. But yeah, it's a matter of if you're coming from a place of, look, I'm here to help you. I don't get anything out of this. I'm just trying to help you kind of see better of what's your magic.
Yeah, I mean, I have a business coach. We coach, and yes, right. You definitely see all kinds of business owners, those that are open and willing to listen and learn, and those that kind of think they know it all. I love those. Those are my favorite. But it really is kind of understanding your audience, understanding where you fit in, and going from there.
Yeah, and as far as looking to mentor, so I mean, we would mentor people. That's one of my businesses. I mentor HR people because, like any of the fields that we're in, there are so many facets of marketing, so many facets of finance and accounting, of IT, of people, and there's no way we can know all of it. So if you have, this is like everybody says, sometimes you work yourself out of a job. This is where that consistent coaching and mentoring is that advisor role that we hopefully could even parlay after we're done doing that year-long fractional contract. Because again, that person who's now coming in full-time W-2 is the hamster on the wheel, and they're not being able to stay abreast. They are focused on the moment, the issues of the moment, and by having a mentor or a coach ongoing, and again, once a week, once a month, just something to make sure that the company is still moving forward. I think that that's something that if it's something that you do, that's great. If it's something that you want to consider, it's another way to kind of continue the relationship.
I'm a huge proponent of getting a coach. Everybody on our operating team either has a coach and or a peer group. I think everybody should have one. And we also, our CMOs, they go in as they're a fractional CMO meets business advisor meets sort of therapist meets CEO whisperer. And those are the ones, exactly what Carol said. First of all, don't also, like, a lot of times we come in and our clients know it's going to be a 1 to 2 year journey with us. Almost every one of our clients at some point wants to hire somebody that's full-time. It does not mean that you need to walk yourself out of a job. Oftentimes, just like Carol said, we stay in there. Once we've built that established trust, we stay in as a business advisor, and we help to really make sure that that new person coming in, we're doing them justice, right? Like, it's really easy to come into an organization, not feel like you're going to be successful and leave. And that's the worst thing that you want your client to, encounter. So yeah, get in there, establish that credibility, establish that advisory. We also, the agencies that we vet and bring in, we tell them, in order for you to come in and help serve our clients, you have to have an advisory mentor mentality. We are helping our clients to become smarter along the way. We're not just going behind the scenes doing the work and saying, here it is. Like, we want every touch point to make people feel like they're growing along the way.
Thank you. One thing that I did not share about myself when I was introducing myself earlier was that in the last couple of years, I've started to do consulting for a number of businesses, doing strategic foundation work and culture training. And Rachel, early on in the talk, you mentioned culture and how important that is. So I was hoping that maybe with this final question before we open it up to Q&A, we could talk about culture again, kind of bookend things. As organizational culture becomes increasingly vital for business success, how can owners ensure that fractional professionals not only comprehend but also actively contribute and embody the company's core values and culture? And what do you like to see in business owners as far as communicating the culture to you so you have a firm grasp of it?
Well, the first thing is they have to know what it is.
Yeah.
Right, we'll start there. And many don't. And so it definitely is trending, the terminology culture, and people are doing, there's cultural leaders now, there's all of these things. So is the onus on the business owner, right? You own several companies. So do you feel, I'm going to ask the question back to you, do you feel like it's your responsibility to tell and teach all of your fractionals about culture? Do you have it in mind? Are you able to articulate it that way? Because I will tell you, of all of the business owners that I've experienced, that my team has experienced, I think I would be hard pressed to ask them that question and that they give it back to me in a good way, with clarity.
That's a great point, and fortunately, we have spent a lot of time developing our core values, and we know who we are. We're developing culture all the time. In fact, we just made a full-time marketing hire, and her credentials were phenomenal, but the thing that really tipped the scales was we felt there was a massive values alignment, and that's why we brought her on. So we're very intentional about that, but I'm wondering, when you encounter businesses who maybe don't have that kind of foundation, are you able to lead them toward that, or is that maybe a deal breaker for you? If they don't have a vision and a set of values, maybe that's not the client for you.
I love how you said intentional. We are super intentional. It's funny, when I'm screening CMO candidates, they're always like, oh my gosh, you're so transparent. You tell us everything about the company. I'm like, because honestly, it's not those aren't the things that make our company. Our company is made up of the culture, the values, the vision, and we live, eat, and breathe our values, and truly hire fire, and that means clients too. So first and foremost, when we're talking with prospects, back in COVID, even, when everybody was losing business, Jen and I were the two only operating members, and we looked at each other through Zoom, and we're like, we're not taking this client on, even though financially it'd be really a good thing for a company, because they weren't values aligned. And really, our values, if you boil them down, is we only want to work with really great people that want to do really good work together, help each other along the way, elevate each other. Nobody throws anybody under the bus, and we have fun along the way. And I will say, we have fired clients along the way. Jen was on a 1-month sabbatical, and I fired a client, and my team was like, wait, are you sure? And I'm like, yes, this is truly how we live and breathe, So we won't take clients on that we don't feel like our values aligned. They might not exactly know exactly how to articulate their values, but we can feel that, okay, we're aligned. But I think it is really important, establish the values that you as a person have and what you will and will not put up with, and it's okay. It's okay to walk away from something if it's not feeding your soul, if it's misaligned from your values. There are other really great companies out there to work with.
I would add, remember that culture can sometimes be a two-sided coin. There's the culture that the CEO thinks there is, and then there's the one that you read on Glassdoor.
Yeah.
So that was something new I learned this year. I had not done that as part of my due diligence to go on Glassdoor, because we're in the people space, and really think, are the initiatives that they're asking us to bring in really going to work? So I would encourage you that if you don't have an engaged workforce, regardless of what your specialty is, but the CEO to whom you're working with is like, oh no, we're great. We've got these values. We rolled them out. We did this and the other thing. And that happens. And you're like, okay, great. You might be getting sold a bill of no goods. And make sure that the CEO also really, I asked the tough question and I turned away a client. I literally said to him, who's responsible for your culture? and he couldn't answer the question. And I was like, okay, it's been nice. So yeah, he didn't even think that he was accountable to how the culture was running. So remember to read Glassdoor.
But I think it's also, as a fractional, it is your job to get in and figure out what the culture is and try to ingratiate yourself into the culture. Like, figure out what it is that makes that company tick. I mean, obviously, hopefully it's something that aligns with your values. But once you get in there, figure out, like, help them to almost feel like you are an employee on their team. That's the best way to get in there and create the trust, and have fun along the way.
Actually, we've been a lot of panelists have been talking about values. A lot of keynote speakers have been talking about values. And I know that it's nothing to do with what we're talking about here, but has anybody actually sat down and really thought about their values? Like, what does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? And you can actually give examples of when that value was truly being lived. And I'll be truly vulnerable and transparent. I thought I had great values, and I went through that exercise, and I realized that all of my values that I had been holding on to for 7 years were completely based in trauma. And I was just like, oh, this is why I'm not getting the people that I want around me. So I had to go, that's why I got a coach, and said, okay, you have to change something that's going on there. How do I get rid of all this trauma and find the right values that are going to attract the clients that I want to work with? So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Carol. Okay, we've got about 10 minutes left, so we're going to open it up to audience questions. Yes, sir. How well can you project? I think we do have one microphone here. I'm not sure if it works. We'll find out.
Thanks. First of all, great panel, and I got a lot out of that, so I really appreciate it. In a previous session, I heard something that I found pretty profound, and someone said, we're being paid often by time, but really what the client is paying us for is outcomes. And this was a salesperson talking, and so they said, well, I really try to manage the outcomes. But in sales, I think often those outcomes are more hard outcomes, number of clients, amount of revenue brought in. I'm in marketing, so things are a little squishier than that sometimes. I try to manage the internal process, like we set a strategy, we put together a plan, we engaged with appropriate agency partners. But I'd like to hear from you guys, first of all, do you agree with that? And second, do you take any sort of intentional approach to managing the outcomes, and what does that look like?
Well, I'll talk to time a little bit. We have the very first client that we booked for fractional services. I'll be very transparent. We charged them $2,500 a month. It was an annual contract, so $2,500 a month, and they got 6 to 10 hours a week from us. Would never do that today, ever, never, not even close. And I have retained that client now several years. And last week, the CEO called me into, because this is one that I personally do, so called me into the office and he said, how are we going to work this month with your retainer? You weren't here and you were in Charlotte and now you're going over to Minneapolis. And they'll be fired when I come back after all of these years because value is not aligned anymore, right? So we infuse ourselves on the team. And sometimes in CMOville and HRville, all of these things, the work is not always voluminous. It's structured, and we hope that we've created systematic approaches that things are working nicely, and then we're just kind of there in a lot of ways. But clearly for him, the value is the hour, how much time I'm spending there on site, just being a fixture. It's not on the what we've created, what I'm going to do this year, how we're going to elevate your company, how we're going to grow, the strategy, that's not there. So to your question, I think it's really kind of early on. I think people who start out in fractional work do it by the hour. That's the thought. As you get more experienced in this world, in this universe, you do it by value. And so there's a price for time. There's a price for experience, education, and thought leadership. So it's very different on this end, but they were the very first fractional client. You see the transition, the difference.
I love this question because I've worked to build up agencies, so I've been on the client side and agency side. there's no perfect. You have to figure out what's good for you. The agency side, we always did value-based pricing, and that is totally right. Like, you might have been in marketing for 20 years, and just because you're working on a project for 20 hours and somebody that's 5 years in, you're going to create way more value. So if you have something where it's like, here's the deliverable, I would say that's more value-based pricing. Like, figure it that way, and then it's more about the expertise that you're bringing to the table. The way that we work as a company, we are retained. So our clients do buy like a confirmed bucket of hours each week, but this is the first thing that we help our clients understand. We take the burden off them. It's not a checkbook like, Meg's going to be in this leadership meeting for an hour. Our CMOs handle all of that. Our clients, we have all the details. Our clients don't even ask for the details. It's about what we're bringing to the table. But for us, it helps us to not burn our CMOs out, because otherwise there could be clients that are commanding 80 hours a week, right? And that's not what you're signing up for. We're very intentional. Our vision is two-pronged. It's to help small to medium-sized businesses to get to next level growth. The other half of our vision is to help our employees, everybody in our company, to love their life and love their work, and in that order. So for us, it's different. We've got bucketed hours that clients that they sign up for, and then it is our CMO's job to help our clients to understand, hey, we're at this. If we want to continue to work on some of these projects, we're either going to have to add additional hours to the retainer this week, or we're going to have to reprioritize and push things off. But if you have hardcore deliverables, I am with Rachel. Like, make sure that you've got a lot of really great experience. What you're bringing to the table versus somebody 5 years out of college is bringing to the table, it's not an hour-to-hour kind of basis.
Hello, thank you. I maybe have a similar question, but feel free to veto it if it's not rooted in enough of sort of the culture stuff. Upstairs this morning, we had to talk about the financial models and like, what are the finances behind this? I'd love to keep pulling on that thread a little bit, but here's maybe the twist, because some of you have talked about different services. You're placing CMOs, you have coaching that you offer people, etc. How do you think of those as a portfolio, charge differently, assess what's needed, etc.?
So I feel bad for some of the people who've heard me talk about this. So prior to owning Matters of Management, I worked in a public accounting firm, and I was charged with, during the downturn of the economy, the first one, of terminating a whole bunch of people. And with that said, what I learned in that experience is that companies also that were going out of business were those that were with only one service. So when I started Matters of Management, I defined 4 buckets. I'm not competing with anyone here. I'm in this little space in New Jersey, so I'm happy to share with you what my fees are, what the arrangements are. So 4 different areas. On an hourly basis, our executive coaching, we charge between $300 and $500 an hour based upon the experience, okay? When it comes to fractional human resources, when we are on site, our starting monthly retainer is $3,500. Our max is about $10,000. Again, depending on needs, how much time, what we're doing on site. We also do staffing, so direct hire placement only. I don't payroll anybody. For there, I'm charging anywhere between 18 and 25%. It's a 90-day return. I will say that the one thing I wanted to do always with staffing, and my talk last week at Staffing World was why I hate recruiters and then became one. So for that, we are 90 days, and we really pride ourselves on never that person never leaving. We never replace someone twice. You get one shot at this. And then we do some merger and acquisition work, and that's consulting or project-based. We'll do like compensation studies. We'll do all of that stuff. And that's, again, an hourly rate or a project fee for those things. And so we find that with the business model, depending on the growth and where we are in the economy at any given time, any one of those services is up while another one is down. And so I tried to do it that way. Hope that's helpful.
Yeah, similarly, it's diversity is the key. My heart space is coaching, right? My mission is human resources. But one of the things that I truly love to talk about and train people on is emotional intelligence. So I will be hired to come in and do EQ training. So it's about, whatever all of your magic is, and then keeping the door open up enough so that you can find the balance. If I didn't do at least one EQ training a quarter, I think I would feel bad in my soul. So I do seek out at least one company that I can do EQ training at least once a quarter, because it has to go out there.
I think you have to get really crystal clear with what you're trying to build and what is going to make it for you financially and what you're trying to build, right? So for our company, we're very transparent with our clients. We are more than not, we are more expensive than a full-time hire. And so that's not what they're buying at this point in time when they bring us on. We are faster to impact and a lower risk. So you have to figure out what is your value prop. If you just start saying like, you know what, I charge XYZ, they're going to start shopping around. Well, I can get a consultant, that's half of that, right? So you have to help them to understand what is your value prop. What is it that they're going to get bringing you in that they're not going to receive from the next person over here? So one of our value props for our clients is they don't just get one singular CMO. They have one CMO at the helm, but they have everybody behind the scenes that our CMOs tap into. And part of our SOW are those CMOs tapping into our mind share, sharing, right? So when CMOs come into our company, the first thing I tell them is, I don't want you to start from ground zero learning our methodology. We have all the training, and you get to look at all of the past work that our CMOs have done, and you get to tap into them. So for us, for our clients, they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, we're paying a premium working with you, but you're industry agnostic. You have all these amazing CMOs. I get one at the helm, but at any point in time, that person is going back and finding out additional information. So it's different than having just one solo consultant. So that's how we set it up. So it's what I would say is figure out what you do really well and what you really want to do, and then what is the value prop that is going to make you completely different or a differentiator from the competitor next door.
All right. Thank you for those audience questions. That's all we have time for. Thanks for attending, and why don't we give another round of applause for our wonderful panelists.
Thank you so much, Matt and company. How about another big round? This is really a riveting session. This is fantastic. Thank you so much. Good stuff, and still more stuff to come. So in 15 minutes, the places to be. Here, we're going to have Brian talking about how to build a referral machine. That's going to be happening right here in 15 minutes at 2:45. Also at 2:45, upstairs, Katie Walter will have a panel discussion on case studies with fractionals and their clients. All right, so choose wisely and know that we're videotaping everything. So, we got you.